and you're watching Call Me Lulu. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. We are both very happy to have you. And today I'm going to be doing my second writing vlog. For my second vlog, I'm going to be working on a flash fiction piece, and I'm going to be taking it from a first draft, so kind of an idea that I've already put some edits on, to a final draft that I'm going to send out to like publications. And I want this vlog to follow it kind of all the way through. So completing my second draft and then revising my second draft, getting critique on it, implementing the critique, and then submitting to literary magazines, and hopefully I can tell you kind of like what I heard back from them. This morning, I'm just going to be working on the very first section of that, which will be some planning and learning about flash fiction. Flash fiction is a form that I've been trying to develop my skill in for maybe a year and a half now, and I kind of like don't think I'm doing it entirely right. Flash fiction is a complete work of fiction that's shorter than a short story. Sometimes they call it like a short story or microfiction. But it's usually 750 to 1500 words. And again, like is complete within that. And I've really been wanting to get better at writing flash fiction because I think it can help really develop my writing style. I think I try to pay a lot of attention to language and be very precise with the language that I use. I like to think of like those videos of like people like crocheting with a sewing needle. I don't know if y'all have like ever seen those on TikTok, but I like to watch them, and I like to think that I am trying to write that way, where it's just like very precise and creating like a very delicate, like intricate pattern with just like very small tools. And I think like flash fiction, like a form that is so condensed, is a lovely place to kind of like learn to be precise with language. Yeah, because you can kind of control every word, and you have to have every word like be having as much impact as it could possibly have in order to complete a story within that like frame that you have. And I've been working on this piece of flash fiction to try and develop. This is my story with some edits on it, so you can see all of my writing in green. There's a lot in some places. The working title of this story is We Never Spoke Again, and that will change because like it definitely does not reflect how the piece went. But I am like enjoying writing it, and I think it's one of those things that I need to write. I also think like even though it is like a standalone, like it is a whole story within itself, it fits like very well into the collection that I'm putting together. So I think it could go in like to that collection quite nicely. And I also want to send it off to literary magazines. While I do that, I'll be learning more about flash fiction magazines. It's actually a genre that I do read already. Anyway, let's get to it. So the first thing I'm going to do for my story this morning is I'm going to work on the mood board, and I'm screen recording on this computer so y'all will be able to see. I started the mood board on Milanote, and then I'm also downloading and importing pictures from Pinterest. So I'm going to look on Pinterest and see what we've got. Creating a mood board is really helpful to me. Because I'm a discovery writer, I feel like my mood board functions almost as an outline. And here I'm picking pictures that remind me of like 2010s Tumblr love stories and like winter breakups and stuff like that, because that relates to the story. And it helps me get a better sense of the plot. that's my Pinterest board. And now I'm gonna go and I am going to read a couple articles about flash fiction, and then I'm gonna like watch a video about flash fiction, and I'm going to look up different magazines. After learning more about flash fiction, I have more confidence in my idea. I think I've got some things set that I need to improve on. The articles and the video kind of talked about focusing on like one image or having kind of like one central movement rather than like a big plot. And I think that's kind of what I've got. And the video from Shaelin Bishop, which is amazing, please go watch it. I'm sure I'll link it in the description, hopefully. It kind of stressed like the ability to experiment within flash fiction, and kind of like the shorter the form, the more ability to experiment you have. So I'm really excited and feel like I've just been given like carte blanche to just do, yeah, make things kind of like as weird as I want them to be, which is really exciting. And yeah, so I think I have some things that I'm gonna change, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow. I think we will be going to Charlie's for lunch rather than the bookstore, but I'll see y'all there. All right, we're here at Charlie's apartment. I think we're gonna do a quick little tour, and then I'm gonna grill everyone about what they're working on real fast, and then I'll get started. All right. Hello. I've submitted my short story to the group. I got stuck in some places and I kind of gave up and just submitted what I had, so hopefully the group can give me like some advice on how to move forward. But today is the day of reckoning, and I'm gonna go get critique, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.
Really got to me, and I mean that as a compliment. Like, I found it very emotionally affecting. You know, I think like specifically what I wrote down is this is such a powerful snapshot of melancholy and quiet despair. You know, I think that you often do so much in such a like minimalist space, and I always appreciate that. And you know, I feel like I give you this note all the time that I have to like struggle to nitpick, and this time I like struggled to nitpick so much I feel like the only thing I had was like some line edits. I think honestly there are a couple of times, because I think sometimes I didn't understand what tense you were writing in, because I think you kind of verb tensed, so I didn't know if you were trying to write in the past or trying to write in the present tense. So maybe just, you know, pick one or the other, because that got a little confusing for me. And I think, but other than that, there's just a couple of places where you use the wrong word, and I think there's like a misplaced apostrophe. But other than that, like I feel like I can't really tell you anything to do to this, because I think it works so well as it is.
Thank you.
And I guess to answer, even though I'm not supposed to, the verb tense thing, it was all in present, and then I was like, no, I want it better in past, and I tried to switch it while I was like,
That explains that.
yeah. Anyway. But.
No answering in the middle of the critique. Wow.
Someone's getting sassy with the camera out.
I didn't mean it. I do it to be funny.
Yeah, I really loved your prose, honestly. It was very like simple, very minimalist, like David said, but the images that you made were very striking and very powerful.
Can you talk
I
just
thought.
a little louder?
Yeah. I basically said I really liked the prose, and I thought some of the images she used were like really powerful. There was kind of this element throughout of like how much of this is literal, how much of this is like kind of a metaphor. I think some of them could have worked on either level, and it was kind of interesting to be deciphering that throughout. I did think the part with her parents' divorce, to me that felt a little bit strange, because the way she described it is so anticlimactic. So that felt, I guess, a little bit strange to me, and I don't necessarily think you need to go into that because I know it's a short piece. But just, it felt a little strange. The line, "we breathe for the first time since this morning," I'm assuming it's not literal, right? But I thought it was interesting because it does feel like a release of tension before the resolution. I guess I didn't totally understand the contrast there, or the contradiction. Okay, and then you have the line, I didn't think it was like a huge problem the way you had it, but I almost wanted that a little bit earlier, because again, it was that kind of thing of like, oh, okay, is this literal or is this a metaphor? So I think it might be a little bit clearer if you put that earlier, or if you're trying to like wait for that reveal. It does do that very well.
So I wrote short but sweet, bittersweet, because it is very bittersweet. You're really good at artfully describing like mundane everyday things, but with so much emotion that it's not mundane at all anymore, which was really great. The way she's describing her relationship feels very like she's watching it happen, not necessarily that it is directly happening to her. And I don't mean that insultingly. As I said that, it sounded almost like I was like saying that I don't feel like she's feeling these. I do think she is, but there's like a detachment there that I think works throughout the whole piece, including the divorce part, where she's talking about her parents' divorce. There were a few technical errors, like the tense change that I just noted. And because it's a super short piece, it does move quickly. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I reread it after I read it the first time, and it was much clearer on a second read. And again, I don't have any suggestions for that. I don't really know how to like clarify it. But it was good on a first read. It was better on a second, and I don't know if there's some way to like elevate it so it's just as good on the first pass.
I really like the portrayal of depression here in the protagonist. I can see the distortions that the protagonist is engaging in, and sort of what other people are mentioning about unreliable narrators. Like, I wonder how much of that is coming into play. Like, maybe they're completely off base about what is going on in their partner's head and what this upcoming conversation is going to be like, because they're catastrophizing and personalizing so much. I thought it was a nuanced depiction of that. So if they had to put in a lot of work to make communication possible and to make this relationship work in the first point, the fact that communication is now breaking down, I think, is even more tragic if they've already made all that investment. And this next note, it's such an economical and like simple, straightforward story about really complex notions. I don't know how much this will work for it. It might be worth playing with, and you might decide that it doesn't really work. But I'm wondering if there could be some sort of subplot or running through line that just travels from the beginning of the story through to the end.
Lular. Yeah, I am always taken with your prose, and I found this piece to be very like dissociative and heavy and melancholy and dreamlike. And I think that sort of dreamlike quality was a strength of the tone of it and how I felt as I read it and how I felt after I read it. And I also think, like, for me, there were moments where I wanted to know, like, what the like, I wanted to feel a little more grounded in reality, which I'll touch on. My first note was that there's just so much visceral sensation in those first few paragraphs, and I loved that. My theory about the tense shift, which you've now debunked, but I was like, the tense shifts when he touches her, and I was like, oh, maybe she experiences their touch in present tense, like there's wordlessness, but maybe that their touch is like this one connective element that brings her into the present, and I liked that idea, and I felt real smart for coming up with it. Because I was like, why did like, I just think everything that you do in your work is so deliberate that I was like, why did Lulu change the tense? I was like, okay, it happens when he touches her, like, and yeah, I thought it was intentional, and I thought it could be a cool thing to play around with.
Hi again, it's the next morning and I've received some lovely feedback on my flash fiction piece. People really seem to connect with it, but they did get tripped up and like pulled out of the story by some awkward phrasing. So I'm gonna go ahead and revise that, and then I'm gonna start sending it out to literary magazines. Implementing the revisions I was given by my critique group. So my flash fiction piece was ready to start submitting, and I've already submitted it to 2 publications. Sorry, Nim was scratching a thing. I've already submitted the piece to 2 publications. I submitted it to Wildness and Smoke Lawn Quarterly, which both accept flash fiction. They are 2 incredible publications that I actually read. I found out about Wildness because I was reading Topaz Winters' poems, and she's like this amazing, like very young, like prodigy poet, and she's like American Singaporean, I believe, and I just love her work, and she's been published in Wildness before, and that's where I like heard of it and started reading it. And then I also submitted to Smoke Lawn Quarterly, which I think is the most like prestigious flash fiction publication that I know of. And I actually found out about it because one of my instructors in a creative writing class had been published in it. Both of these publications are incredibly likely to reject me. Wildness has actually rejected me twice this year already. So I should probably take the hint, but I just like love their publication so much that I'm like, you can reject me as many times as you want. I just want to be included. But anyway, so I'm very likely to get my 3rd rejection from Wildness and my 2nd rejection from Smoke Lawn within the week. I actually chose an option for submitting from Smoke Lawn Quarterly, where they provide feedback from the editor on your work, which I think is really fun. The editors for that magazine are people I really respect. So I'd like to hear their feedback. Both of those publications, by the way, respond really, really quickly. It's like a week and a half for both of them. And I thought while I'm waiting for a response, I would go through the cover letter that I'm sending out with my submissions for this flash fiction piece. So when you're sending out a submission to a literary magazine, a lot of the time you have to include a cover letter. I've also only been accepted to one publication so far, so I can't say like with any certainty that I am an expert in cover letters, but I think I do know like a few easy kind of like mistakes that you can circumvent, and I think it's always good to see like a peer kind of doing this along with you. But anyway, that's just what I mean. I don't mean that I'm doing this as an expert. I'm doing this as a peer, as someone who's in the trenches with you. But I'm just gonna go through my cover letter. I'm screen recording right now, so I hope y'all can see. Titled this A Tree Falls cover letter. And it says, "Dear editor and the editors of publication, please consider my story A Tree Falls complete at 970 words for inclusion in publication. I appreciate your attention to my work and look forward to hearing from you. This is a simultaneous submission. I will withdraw the piece immediately if it is accepted elsewhere. Sincerely, pen name, under it email. Biographical statement, pen name, lives in Austin, Texas with her husband and cat Nim. Her work has previously been published in a City magazine." So very short and sweet. I think one of the most important things you can do with a cover letter is not say stuff. So like, this is not a query letter. It's not talking about like different content in your work, themes of the work. It's just like pretty straightforward. And you always want to address it. I mean, it's so cute. She's scratching the cardboard, sorry. I don't know if you can hear that sound, but it's Nim scratching some cardboard. But always address your cover letter to the specific editor of the publication that works in like the genre you're submitting. So if you're sending fiction, send it or address your letter to the fiction editor. If you're submitting poetry, address it to the poetry editor. And then there are probably going to be other editors or readers that look at it. So I say like, dear specific editor and the editors of publication. And then please consider my story A Tree Falls, and kind of same as a query letter, you do the like title of your story in like all caps, italics, something like that. This is flash fiction, so I'm including a word count because they're gonna want to know that it's under 1,000 or under 1,500, whatever your cap is. So complete at 970 words for inclusion in publication. I appreciate your attention to my work and look forward to hearing from you. If it is a publication like Smoke Long or like Wildness that I just love and I read all the time, I would include a bit, like a single sentence, like gushing about the publication, but I want to make sure that it's like genuine and honest, which for these two it absolutely is. Yes, my love. Come here. And then the next paragraph, just 2 sentences. This is a simultaneous submission. I will withdraw the piece immediately if it is accepted elsewhere. So if you're sending your piece out to several literary magazines at a time, that's called a simultaneous submission. And there's a rule within like submissions where if your submission is accepted by one magazine, you're not waiting to see if a magazine you like more also accepts it. You go with the first one that accepts you, so you'll have to withdraw the piece. Almost every publication that you can send to is going to want to know if it's a simultaneous submission. So I always include that. And then just sincerely, pen name, and then I include my email under that. Some publications are like, include all of your contact information. We want all of your contact information everywhere. Other publications are like, we don't want to know anything about you. We blind read to the extent that it will be hard for us to get in contact with you if we accept your piece. So for like including personal information, make sure that you're like reading whatever the submission guidelines are. I know for me, I read them like 5 or 6 times because I don't want to mess up. And then at the bottom, I include like a very brief biographical statement. Despite the fact that I'm like sharing my life on YouTube right now, I don't like talking a whole lot about myself. And I think like one thing I love about like writing fiction is that I can share kind of like my feelings and things that I'm struggling with without having to share biographical details. So some people write longer biographical statements, but mine's really short. I just say pen name, lives in Austin, Texas with her husband and cat Nim. Her work has previously been published in a Prissy magazine. For biographical statements, I think the best thing that you can do is look back at like works that like the magazine has published, and they'll have biographical statements at the bottom. Some magazines like a really voicey, really detailed biographical statement, others do not. It's probably good to like tailor the biographical statement publication to publication. For some submissions, I include like more information in my biographical statement because I think it fits the submission. But for this one, I'm just keeping it short and sweet. And I think that's all I have to share at this point in the process, but I'll talk to you guys again after I get my responses back from Wildness and Smokelong. See you soon. Hiya! It's a little bit later, and I have responses from both Wildness and Smokelong. As was expected, they were both rejections, but I did order feedback from senior editors at Smokelong, and I was really encouraged by what I heard. And I'm gonna read y'all a little bit of it right now. So I got this feedback. I got feedback from 3 senior editors. The first editor was kind of like a neutral meh. The second editor actually really liked the piece and gave me some like really valuable feedback as well as praise. And then the third editor was like a little bit more like negative on the piece, but I don't mean that as like they were insulting or anything. They were like perfectly professional, but like I didn't see like as much structure or value in the piece as like the other editors did. And yeah, overall I was really encouraged by it, and I think I'm gonna polish this piece up and put it in my writing sample for my MFA applications, which I was like not expecting to want to do. I thought I had that like set of pieces settled. So I was like surprised by that. Without further ado, here is the feedback. So the first editor said the descriptions of small moments are really nicely done here. And then they wanted to know how one of the events in the story was linked to the others. And they wanted some clarity on the timeline. The second editor, who was the one who was really positive, said, I like how well this flash understands the interior of its characters and the intimacy between them. The gestures are beautiful, and I find the writing sings especially well in their embodiment. And they list some of the gestures that they liked. They said that the story could benefit from some compression and some clarity of timeline, which is a theme. Yeah, and they want the story to focus into one scene with more action, which I have an idea for already. And they said, overall, the writing has such a sensitive ear and psychological insight. I'd be interested to see where this goes in revision, which is really lovely, because psychological insight is like something I was really trying to write in this piece. I was trying to write like tension and then like insight into like gestures and like thoughts. I feel like it's really difficult to do that thing where you come up with like gestures to express emotions that are original in characters. And I think I used the same ones over and over again. And in this flash, I really wanted to work on generating some like motions and like expressions of emotion that were authentic and also felt new to me. And I'm glad that like someone thought that was like done effectively. The third editor said that they wanted me to establish the timeline a bit more, which again, a theme. They said they wanted to see kind of whether the story was like straight realism or magic realism, which I was like going for something in the middle, but I get that it needs to be kind of like clarified as to like where it is on that spectrum. Yeah, they thought the story was a bit uneven and that I could plot through a bit more, which I think tracks with the second editor's statement that they want one scene that really like speaks to the piece. Yeah, and then this feedback made me a little sad, but they said, where is the heart of this story? Maybe it's a time that we don't yet see. And I was like, oh, I want you to see the heart of the story, but it's something to fix and something to think about. Overall, I think that this feedback was wonderful. I know where to go from it. And I also just like feel more encouraged by having that feedback than having just like a regular rejection, because I kind of know where to go from it. So it's kind of got like a built-in next step. And then also, a lot of the feedback that was given to me here, if you didn't notice, was some of the same feedback that was given to me in critique group that I just decided not to fully implement. So just goes to show critique groups are for a purpose. You should listen to your critique group members and not be like, but I want to maintain my art. It's like, sometimes you're right as an artist, but like sometimes you're not, you know? Anyway, I'm gonna make all of those changes and I'm gonna add this piece to my writing sample for graduate school, and I'm also gonna send it out a few more places that are like more realistic for publication, I think. And I'll let y'all know how that goes. See you soon. Take care, drink water, listen to some bluegrass. Bye.